Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's movie talk, the first one of the year. And I'm hoping that I can do this for the rest of the year. So, Wonka. We're talking about Wonka this weekend. It retook the number one position after being dropped to second place last weekend, and it actually went up by 33% to add an additional 24 million for the 3-day weekend for a total of $134.6 million. It seems like Wonka, as you'll find out later on in this video, will be the big winner for the holiday movie season. I mean, it's possible it could be a run with The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, but it seems like this will be the big winner. And it went up 33%, and it's because its reviews are so good. And this movie, Timothy Chalamet, he's been made a movie star, or at least a movie almost star. I mean, Wonka seriously has been doing very well. It had an opening weekend of 39 million, which is really good. It dropped last weekend by like 50%, but then it went back up this weekend. And the reason for that is because the New Year's weekend, like the days right before New Year's, are much bigger movie going days than the days right before Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve and before that are typically smaller when it comes to the movie like attendance levels. Christmas Day and the days following Christmas up until the day after New Year's Day are typically the biggest days when it comes to, how many people go to the movies. And they're even the biggest movie going days of the year. Pretty much the only days that are bigger are like the Thanksgiving and Memorial Day and the first weekend of May, the summer kickoff. But 134 million, that is a mighty impressive total. Um, I mean, this seems on track if it can continue performing how it is, to at least making 180 million, but it could go as high as like 210, maybe 215, which would be an impressive total for a musical. I mean, Wonka is a musical, and its overseas numbers are amazing. It's already passed 240 million overseas, and it's already almost at $400 million worldwide. It would need to make about another 97-ish million dollars before it can enter the top 10 worldwide, and I think it'll do that. As it did make another like 50 million, I think, overseas this weekend, just for the weekend. So I think it's entirely likely that it gets past Ant-Man and the Lost Quantumania, which is currently the number 10 spot. Um, But yeah, I mean, Wonka is just doing really well. It only had a budget of 125 million, which means it's already past broke even. It probably might need a little bit more to break even, but you know, if it hasn't broken even already, it'll certainly break even by the end of next weekend. I mean, this movie just has been doing extremely well, and if you're Warner Brothers, you have to be really pleased about how this movie is doing. Warner Brothers has had a really good year so far. And their number two movie is Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, which has not done extremely well. It opened to just around 27 million last weekend. It dropped 30% this weekend. And a 30% drop under any other circumstances would be a very good hold. But this is the holiday movie season. Typically, what you see, even for a big movie, is it'll kind of level off or it'll have an under 25% drop. 30% for a holiday movie is like okay for a movie second weekend. It's not bad. Bad would mean it only dropped normal like a blockbuster. It certainly though is not great. And I think this movie really needed to be great in order to have good legs. Because the first Aquaman was already at like 100, it was like a double. It was like more than double at this point in its run. The first Aquaman was. And this Aquaman, seems to be on track to at least getting to 100 million. It'll be the second DC movie this year to get there. But I don't think it'll get much further past that mark. Maybe it can get to like 120 million. But that would just be so bad because the first Aquaman made well over 300 million at the domestic box office. And this one seems it might only do about a third of that. And it had a $200 million budget, like a $250 million budget. And this movie so far is only now at 250 million. It has been making a lot more money overseas. That is where this movie has been killing it, just like the first Aquaman did. But still, overseas, it's also only making about a third the first Aquaman did. So if this Aquaman only makes a third of what the first one did, it would end its run with around $400 million or so. It made about 70 million overseas this weekend, which implies it might have like another, 150, 200 million in the tank. So I think it probably ends its run with 425, maybe 450 million, which would make it the highest grossing DC movie since the first Aquaman. But again, it just wouldn't, it's not a good number. The first Aquaman made over $1 billion, and this one seems like it might not even make a third of that, which, I mean, it's just not a good look for Aquaman in the Lost Kingdom at this point. We still have the rest of its run to go. I think the third weekend, this upcoming weekend, will be a very good indicator of how this movie will end its run. But overall, if I were Warner Brothers, I would have liked something better. And then in third place, we have Migration, which opened last weekend and actually had a 38% increase this weekend, $17.2 million for a domestic total of 54.3 million and a worldwide total of about 100 million. This movie's budget is reported at like $70 million or so. So it does need a little bit more to break even. It needs to at least double what it's got right now in order for Universal to call this a win because it's an Illumination movie. And I think it could do that. Um, if I were looking at this, I would say, based off of how holiday movies usually do and how the legs usually are after the holiday movie season, I would say it has a solid chance of getting to 100 million, the century mark, at the domestic marketplace. It has a solid chance. It is a family film. However, the overseas numbers aren't great, and Illumination usually does kill it overseas, but this movie hasn't really been clicking really anywhere. So I think 200 million is still up in the air. Um, And obviously, Universal wanted something much higher for this movie, for them to consider this movie a win. The movie that came in fourth place for the weekend was The Color Purple. It did not have an overseas release. It's not released in any overseas markets yet. For the 3-day weekend, it made 13 million. However, it opened on Christmas Day. It was Christmas Day. Obviously, it was on a Monday. It was a week ago. Um, and, the 13 million weekend is, like that's fine. But you see that it made 45 million. A good chunk of that 45 million came from the Christmas opening day, which was 18 million. This movie was number one for Christmas. And it was huge out of the gate. It was massive out of the gate. But it leveled off throughout the week, and it only ended up making 13 million for the 3-day weekend. I remember when it opened, everybody was like, "Oh, this is clearly a front runner uh, for award season and everything." But I think just how quickly it fell means maybe it's not a front runner, but we'll have to see. As for the overall top 10. The number 5 movie was Anyone But You. This movie went up 46% for $25 million total. Number 6, you have The Boys in the Boat, which is a new release. It opened with 8 million. This is another one that opened on Christmas Day, so it does have a $22 million total so far. The Iron Claw went up 4% for $5 million weekend total and 16 million overall. Ferrari, new release, about $4 million, and it's at about $10 million so far. This is another new release. The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, doing really well. It only dropped 5%, which of course is not great because, this is the holiday movie season, it should have gone up. But it lost like 400, 500 theaters, so that 5% drop is much better when you do look at that context. Uh, but right now it's at about $160 million, meaning it is the number one movie for the holiday movie season so far. The Boy and the Heron is at number 10. As for the yearly domestic top 10 of 2023, this is how it ended up. Now, of course, there is a chance that, something like Wonka could enter the top 10, and if that happens, I'll update you on that. I think Wonka has a good chance of ending its run at like number 8 domestic. But so far, this is the end of 2023. This is how it shook up. Barbie at number 1 with $636.2 million. Super Mario Brothers movie at number 2 with $574.9 million. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse at number 3 with $381.3. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 at number 4 with $359 million. Oppenheimer at number 5 with $326 million. The Little Mermaid at number 6 with $298. Ant-Man and the Lost Quantumania at number 7 with $214. John Wick Chapter 4 at number 8 with $187. The Sound of Freedom number 9 at $184. And Taylor Swift The Eras Tour, which did get a theatrical release, is at number 10 with $179.65 million. The holiday top 10. This is the seasonal top 10 for 2023. Now, this upcoming weekend will start the winter movie season. It goes from the first weekend of January after the after New Year's, the first weekend of January after New Year's, all the way up until the last weekend of February. Spring is from the first weekend of March up until the last weekend of April. Summer is from the first weekend of May to Labor Day. And then, just goes on after that. But number 1 is The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes with over 160 million. These numbers are including the New Year's Day releases. So the previous chart that you saw where Hunger Games was only at 159, that was not including the New Year's Day numbers. But Wonka is at number 2 with 142 million. It does seem on track to at least being number 1. But The Hunger Games is really the big winner here. It had a smaller budget. It's made 300 million worldwide so far. I think Lionsgate is very happy with that 160. And as you'll see, or I guess as you've already seen, John Wick Chapter 4 is at 187. So the fact that Lionsgate was able to get 2 movies to make basically the same amount of money in 1 year, that's a big win. But Trolls Band Together is at number 3 with 97 million. Seems like it's gonna fall short of 100 million. Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom, definitely gonna get to 100 million. It's at 84 million when you include the New Year's Day numbers, like the estimates. And it goes over the Marvels, which is now at number 5 with 85.5 million. Wish is at number 6 with 61 million. What a disaster for that movie. Napoleon is at number 7 with 60 million. Migration number 8 with 59 million. And The Color Purple number 9 with 50 million, once you include the New Year's Day numbers. And Godzilla minus 1 at 45 million. As for the worldwide top 10 of 2023, this I expect to be the final numbers, but again, there is a chance that Wonka does pop up in the top 10. Barbie at number 1 with over $1.4 billion. It ended its run at number 14 overall, and it only ended its run with about $10 million behind Frozen 2. At number 2, you have the Super Mario Bros. Movie with about $1.36 billion. It ended its run at number 17 overall on of all movies that have ever been released, it's number 17. Oppenheimer at number 3, $952 million. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 with $845 million. That's the highest grossing superhero movie of the year. And it's the most successful overall, really. Actually, Spider-Verse was really the most successful, but Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is really the only MCU movie. Like, if you put MCU and the DCEU together, this is the only one of those that really succeeded. Fast X at 704 million at number 5. That's where it ended its run. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, number 6 with 690 million. So close to the 700 million mark. That's really a heartbreaker. The Little Mermaid at 569.6. And Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning at 567.5. Really close right there. Elemental at number 9 with 496.3, and Ant-Man Quantumania at number 10 with 476. So that's the worldwide um, top 10, the domestic top 10, and the holiday top 10. As for this upcoming weekend, the only wide release is Night Swim, and tracking has it opening somewhere between 17 and $25 million. But that was this week's movie talk. Uh, please tell me your thoughts below. What you think about this weekend's box office numbers, and I'll see you guys next week.